Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good afternoon. On the PIO podcast tonight, we have Josh Devine. He's a communications director for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, Josh, tell me a little bit about your job as a comms director for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
Sure. So I've been with the agency for more than 7 years, going on 7.5 years. And my role as communications director is to oversee everything we do from both an external and internal communications perspective. So that deals with public information. It deals with some of our community engagement, recruiting efforts, public relations, a little bit of everything.
So you literally are managing it all. Now, let me go back. What's your background?
Sure. My background is in journalism. So before I joined the Bureau in 2014, I was a television news reporter and anchor for probably more than 10 years. I graduated from Northwestern University with a master's degree, so kind of close to your neck of the woods.
Oh, yeah.
And started my TV career in West Virginia, where I worked for 2 years. I'm originally from West Virginia, so it was sort of great to go home for a couple of years, but I spent 2 years there, then bounced up to Flint, Michigan, where I worked for more than 4.5 years as a reporter and anchor, and then landed in Nashville in 2009, where I was a reporter at the NBC affiliate for more than 5 years. And just happened to be in the live truck one day, and the phone rang, and it was the director of the TBI, Mark Gwynn, who said, "Hey, would you be interested in interviewing for a PIO position here at the TBI?" And it just so happened to be the perfect timing for me professionally, personally. And I got to tell you, it has been an absolute joy to have this job and to represent this agency and its people. We are an agency that is unique. We're an independent lead law enforcement agency for the state of Tennessee. We deal with the worst of the worst, but I got to tell you, the people that I have the pleasure of working with are some of the most principled, disciplined, experienced investigators out there.
Outstanding. How big is your office at the TBI?
Sure. So we obviously have jurisdiction across the entire state of Tennessee, and we only have about 610, 620 employees, and we cover everything from criminal investigations. We run the state crime labs. We handle all the CJIS functions. We have technology and innovation. We do training. So we do a lot for the size of our agency. Our public information team, 4 people, right? So it's me. And I have a senior public information officer who I work with in our Nashville office. Her name is Susan Nyland. We have 2 regional public information officers, one on the west side of the state, Kelly McAllister, and one in Upper East Tennessee, Leslie Earhart. And I've got to tell you, there's no one else I would want on our team aside from these 3 women. They are absolute rock stars and great public information officers.
You've kind of, my next question, you've kind of already answered it earlier on, the overall role of the communications office, but go into some detail about some people may not understand the role of the TBI itself. Can you go into some detail about what they do?
Sure. So our agency has its roots dating back to 1951. And we were actually founded because a newspaper reporter noticed that a homicide case that occurred in his jurisdiction was mishandled by the local agency. Actually, folks had trampled on the area right outside the window that was key and crucial to the crime. And so this newspaper reporter, and subsequently the Tennessee Press Association, started lobbying and started positioning themselves to advocate for a statewide law enforcement agency that would primarily be able to help rural jurisdictions investigate the worst of the worst. And so that's how we got our start, was in 1950. Then in 1980, on the back end of a scandal involving the governor, who was at the time accused of selling pardons, it was determined wisely by this General Assembly here in Tennessee that there needed to be an independent law enforcement agency that had the authority to potentially investigate crime to the highest levels of government in the state. And so that's why we came out from under the State Department of Safety and we became our own independent law enforcement agency in 1980.
Okay. Under what authority, who do you answer to?
Right. So it's interesting. We have our accountability to the state's district attorneys general and also the General Assembly.
Okay.
So, for example, when there's a homicide in Tennessee, the district attorney general for that judicial district where it might occur, might decide that he wants the TBI to handle it. And that's when we would get brought in to investigate. Now, there are certain areas of the law where we can open investigations as we see fit. And these are things that might, by their very nature, have a multi-jurisdictional nexus. So things like drug cases or fugitive searches or human trafficking cases, those sorts of things, we can open cases on our own volition.
Okay, great. I appreciate you explaining that because
Yeah.
it is a very different organization compared to some of the other state organizations that are out there. So
We're
I wanted
definitely
to
a unique little beast for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk about a campaign specifically that you created, but I love how the fact that you're covering everything from internal to external communication across every facet of law enforcement that exists in the state of Tennessee. This campaign that you created was called It Has to Stop. I want you to go into some detail about that campaign.
Yeah.
Could you explain it?
Thrilled to do it. So It Has to Stop is our centerpiece public awareness campaign that we launched back in 2014 to raise awareness about human trafficking in the state of Tennessee. And it's a funny story. I was sitting in my office 6 weeks into the job at TBI, brand new baby PIO, and all of a sudden the director walks into my office and says, "Josh, we need a public awareness campaign around human trafficking." And I said, "Great, I'm on board. What's human trafficking?" And I had to do an immense amount of learning. And so I connected with our assistant special agent in charge, Margie Quinn, who taught me everything I needed to know about human trafficking before I could effectively communicate about human trafficking. And from there, I started thinking about what is human trafficking? How do we communicate about it? What should people look out for? And we kept coming back to this whole concept of it in our conversations. We were saying it looks like this and it does this and it might look like this in this community. And we just built the whole campaign around the concept of it. And then we wanted something that really made a strong statement in saying that it has to stop. And so that's really become our rallying cry. And I got to tell you, it's been probably some of the most personally impactful work that I've done as a PIO because I've learned so much about the issue. I've had the opportunity to embed with some of our operations that we've done. And when you see what this kind of crime looks like from all sides, you can't experience it and not walk away changed and convicted about this type of injustice that happens in communities all over the country and around the world every single day.
I know. I think a lot of people look at human trafficking as, it's the kid getting stolen off the corner or at the mall or something like that. And they don't necessarily realize that there's so much more to it. And the facets there's just so many different ways it can happen. And it has nothing to do with little girls at the mall. It could be migrant immigrants coming from outside the state, or it could be massage parlors, or it could be home workers, home care workers. It's just amazing what's out there. And I imagine the public was not aware of it anywhere near where they should be.
No, and that's exactly what we were up against, right? There were all these preconceived ideas about what human trafficking was. And the reality is we had to do a lot of myth busting. So we tried to be as clear as we could about saying what human trafficking is. And we got a little bit of pushback from the public because there were some folks who said, you're just rebranding prostitution and calling it something different. And we had to do some deep education with both the media and with the public and really produce some pieces. And we've got them on our website, ithastostop.com, that very clearly spell out what human trafficking is, where you have sex or labor and an exchange of money or anything of value. And then that third element of force, fraud, or coercion, or in the state of Tennessee, if it's a minor, doesn't matter if there's force, fraud, or coercion, it's automatically human trafficking. So we've got some of the toughest laws in the nation when it comes to human trafficking, and our efforts statewide, not just communications, but law enforcement, the non-government piece to all of this too. We've been widely regarded as one of the top, if not the top state in the country for the way we've approached human trafficking. So it's something that we're really proud of. It's something that we've had to learn a lot about, and thankfully we're in a good position to keep working to address it.
I'm curious, why do you think the state of Tennessee has such extensive laws against human trafficking? What was the precipice for that?
Well, it all started years ago. Really, this is something that the state of Tennessee's been dealing with for more than a decade now, right? And so the most significant thing that the state of Tennessee did, I think, was to change the laws around prostitution as it relates to a minor. So, for example, we now say in the state of Tennessee, if law enforcement stops a minor and it's a prostitution situation, you cannot charge prostitution for a minor. There's no such thing, right? If a minor can't consent to sex, they can't be a prostitute. In the eyes of the law, they're a victim of human trafficking. And so there's been this really seismic shift around the language and around the approach to prostitution. We've done great work in the state to train the state's law enforcement to where if you pull over a situation and it looks like prostitution, we want these folks to sort of pump the brakes and ask some deeper questions about what really is going on. And we're just starting to do more work around labor trafficking as well. And we're learning more about that piece too. But we always tell people what we're doing with human trafficking in the state of Tennessee is not dissimilar to what happened maybe 40, 50 years ago around domestic violence, right? Where this was something that happened in communities all the time and law enforcement saw it, but didn't really know what to do or turned a blind eye, unfortunately. And we're trying to see a similar cultural shift around the issue of trafficking. And thankfully, we're getting there.
Outstanding. This hashtag that you created, It Could Be Me. How was that received amongst the public when you were putting it out?
You know, we launched that sub piece of the campaign to really illustrate that the victims of human trafficking can be anybody. You know, it is not just migrant workers or folks who are brought over across the border. We want folks to realize that it could be that 13-year-old girl who lives with her mom and her mom can't make the rent payment that month, so she's going to send her daughter off to the landlord to take care of it. Or it might be the 15-year-old boy whose dad has a drug dependency and can't pay his dealer. And so he sends him off to take care of it, that kind of thing. It can look like that. It could be the 15-year-old girl who has Snapchat and all of a sudden she's getting contacted by creepy men and can find herself in a volatile situation that she's ill-equipped to handle. So we really wanted to create a sub-campaign that illustrated that the victims of human trafficking can look like anybody. It can look like these high school students, college students who have been so great to embrace our human trafficking campaign and really run with it. I'd like to see more of that happen. But as you know full well, being a PIO isn't just this. You know, we created this beast, and this really running this campaign could be one person's full-time job. But this is just a small sliver of everything our office has to deal with. So we've tried to do what we can with the time that we have and the resources.
Right. So you produce videos. Is that correct? You did like educational videos. Was that all done in-house, or did you farm that out to somebody else?
We did that all in-house, and we are a scrappy little team. I got to tell you, we have learned as a small but mighty little team to beg, barter, and steal whatever it takes to do what we think we need to do. So I'm telling you, we shoot videos on cell phones, we shoot videos on GoPros, we edit on pretty much any kind of platform we can make things work. I have some nonlinear editing experience from my days in TV, so I have an Adobe subscription, which is a godsend. But we just try to do what we can to make it work. That's the other funny thing. When the director said we needed this public awareness campaign, I said, great, I'm on board and I'm happy to do it. What's my budget?
That's always what it is, isn't it?
That's always what it is. He said, goose egg, you don't have a budget. So, I mean, I think that's the thing when you're a PIO, you have got to find a way to be resourceful and creative and do what you think you need to do.
Right. One of the things I was thinking about is when you said that goose egg, obviously I knew that was going to be the answer, by the way.
It's always the answer.
always is either partnering with one of the high schools in a community where they have an academy for journalism, or even one of the film colleges that have a film program. Those are always a good opportunity to grab young minds and who have equipment that you can do all this stuff with. So yeah, outstanding. Again, going into that topic of human trafficking, back up here. What is one thing that It Has to Stop did that you didn't expect?
I think it got the conversation started, and the conversation has continued to evolve. So we launched the campaign in 2014. And the centerpiece of the whole campaign was simply to say, here's what human trafficking is, right? And then we sort of evolved the campaign in the past couple of years to really more directly say, here's what human trafficking isn't. Because we still find that people have these preconceived ideas, and all agencies see this, where there'll be these rumors that pop up on social media where someone says, oh, I had tape on my door handle and I think it's a sign that a human trafficker was after me, and all of that. And so we had to really produce new elements to the campaign to address some of that. We also went after creating Spanish versions and Chinese versions of all the material so we could get that into more hands, realizing that we have portions of the population we still need to reach. I think the thing that's been most surprising about the campaign is it hasn't just been a TBI campaign. Now we see a lot of the nonprofit sector in the state of Tennessee who are just incredible to work with. I mean, we are so blessed to have some strong non-governmental support from these agencies that are able to help victims become survivors. They do just incredible work. They've embraced that It Has to Stop campaign and that hashtag and that message as well. So we're all sort of singing from the same sheet of music when it comes to our commitment on
That's great that you were able to bring in the grassroots organizations, the ones that are actually doing the very hard work of working with those victims of human trafficking, and then helping them return to normal life. I think that's phenomenal. Outstanding job. All right, so let's change directions here. What is something that people within your own organization do not understand about the communications director's job or the PIO's job?
Yeah, I think this is still something that we're working on at the Bureau. Every time someone just spits back at me, oh, you're just the media people. I just want to punch somebody in the throat sometimes. And it happens more often than you would think. But the reality is I'm always quick to say, dealing with the media and dealing with reporters increasingly is less and less of what we actually do day to day. And I'm grateful for that, because I think that the more the PIO can see their job as community engagement and finding a way to speak to the concerns of the public in creative, actionable ways, the better. And so for us, I always try to tell the team, let's shoot for making media inquiries maybe a third to a fourth of what we do as a team, because I really want our folks to feel like they've got the margin to go to community meetings, go network with other PIOs, go visit newsrooms, go sit in on this topical discussion at a college about something that we have a vested interest in. I think that the more we can do that as PIOs, the more we're listening to the communities that we serve, the more that we're able to craft communications that I think matter.
Okay, great. All right, so let me throw this at you. As a new PIO who's coming into the field, what misconceptions do they have, and how could an experienced PIO help them eliminate those misconceptions?
I think the biggest thing, I think new PIOs often feel like they need to be available and accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I will tell you that was my approach when I started as a PIO, and it is just not sustainable. We were not built to be people who worked 24/7, 365. And so I think that I would tell young PIOs, you have got to find a way early in your career to set healthy boundaries around your availability, your accessibility, what you will do and what you will not do, and communicate those both internally and externally. So one of the healthiest things I think we did as an office was several years ago, we sent an email to all of our media partners across the state. And we said, We love you, but we need you to know we're a team of 4. We don't work all the time like your newsrooms do. So here's what you can expect from us. If you send us an inquiry from 8:30 to 4:30, we're going to do our best to answer it that day. If you send us an email at 5:30, 6:30, 2 in the morning, it'll be handled the next business day. We also set up a centralized email inbox so that emails come right into that. And we have trained the media, thankfully, to contact us there. And doing so has really, really cut down on the number of 2 a.m. phone calls from reporters working overnight, seeking an update about something that's really not that important. So setting those boundaries, communicating those boundaries. And I think the other piece too is realizing that it is on the PIO to determine publicly what an emergency is. Because if you leave that up to the media, everything is an emergency. And if everything is an emergency, nothing is an emergency. So I think it's on the PIO, and I would tell younger PIOs to learn how to do this sooner rather than later, to really frame things in the right kind of context for the community and respond accordingly to the media.
I've told PIOs, the newer ones that I've come in contact with, and like whenever a reporter tells you that they're on a deadline or they've got to get to a news the breaking news time and they need the information, I'm like, I don't work for you. I work on my own timeline.
Yeah.
You'll get the information when I can provide the information.
Yeah. And I think that there's a firm but polite way to say that. And I'm all for having a great relationship with the media. And thankfully, our office does across the state. But when you have lines and when you have boundaries, that's not about setting up a wall between you and the media. That's about doing the common sense things that are going to protect your longevity in this role, which is what we need to, as a community and as an industry, really work toward, are these common sense things that really contribute to self-care and longevity.
Absolutely. And self-care is really important for a PIO. You will not last if you don't have that ability to set boundaries and break away, disengage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's so easy with the phones, right? Having them 24/7, they're always there.
Always.
Yeah. All right. So let's really lighten this up. Let's go off on a couple rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Beer, wine, or bourbon?
Well, I'm in Tennessee, of course, bourbon.
All right.
Absolutely.
What's a favorite one?
Maker's Mark, generally. It's my day to day.
That's mine. That is mine. What's a life lesson you learned that you've used every day?
I think the golden rule really is just treat other people the way you want to be treated. I think that it doesn't do you any good as a person to just sort of be mean or be ugly. I think there's so much of that in the world these days. You see it all the time on social media. You know, I have got one of the best things I've ever heard a pastor say was hurt people, right? And I think that it's on us as PIOs, it's on us as humans, frankly, to be above the noise.
I agree. So what or who inspires you?
So my faith inspires me. I am a Christian and really embrace my perspective on life through that lens. I think that also what inspires me is when I see people make tough decisions and pursue better stories for their life. I think that life has a way of sort of putting you on a singular path, right? And it's inspiring to me when I see people risk things and take chances and try and fail and learn lessons and try again. I love that.
I agree. What is the best compliment you've received?
That's a tough one. I think that the best compliment I've ever received was probably on the back end of a really intense search for a missing child that we had in Upper East Tennessee. This might have been 4 or 5 years ago. And this is one of those things where as the PIO, I was on the ground for 7 days, basically living in an ARC command post, doing interviews back to back and dealing with media from all across the world and the whole 9 yards. And on the back end, our assistant special agent in charge who handles missing kids had some very kind things to say about my work, my contributions, and really, I think, walked away from that experience and that overall story having a better appreciation for what we do in this particular way.
Excellent. Do you have a favorite word or phrase that you use all the time?
I love the word nexus. And in fact, my friend Susan, who I work with in Nashville, we actually have bells that sit on our desk. And whenever someone says the word Nexus, the other person dings their bell. So it's kind of a running gag that we have in the PIO office. And we try to slip that into as many conversations or interviews as we can. And I hope that you notice that I've already slipped the word Nexus into this interview a bit earlier. So dang.
She'll be dinging it when she listens to it, right? There
you will. That'll be her hint. She knows it's for
That's
her.
outstanding. You might find a sound effect go into that then, now that I know this.
I hope so.
So where do you go and what do you do when you need to reset?
I go to the gym. I love to run. I've also recently really embraced yoga as something that I love to do. There's a yoga studio right around the corner from where I live in Nashville, and I've really made some great friends. And I think that it's just something that kind of is so foreign to my day-to-day experience that it really sort of takes me mentally out of what we do in this field. And I think it's just been a great addition to my life.
There's a PIO that I interviewed earlier, very early in the podcast series. She does yoga for the sheriff's department. She actually holds a class for the sheriff's department and in the corrections department, and it's helped de-stress a lot of people. So I think that it's very cool to hear that. All right. So if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell them?
I would probably say slow down and stop trying so hard. I think that there could be this tendency when you're just starting out in life to feel like you've got to have it all together and put it all together. And I think that if you will just ease up, life just happens. Things just fall into place the way they should, and you're able to just sort of ease through life, enjoying life.
Absolutely. I agree. So Josh, final thoughts. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think we hit it all. I mean, I think that I love being a PIO. I love this profession. The PIOs that I've met across the country are some of the most creative, resourceful, kind-hearted individuals you'll ever meet. I cannot tell you the number of times where I've dealt with a really volatile emergency situation and someone's seen an interview or seen a press clip with my name in it, and they'll just send me a DM on Twitter or an email and just say, hey, you guys really killed it with this one, or knocked it out of the park, or I know it's got to be tough, go get some rest, or that sort of thing. So I mean, it's just been an incredible field, and it's the joy of my life, frankly, to work for this agency and work in this field and be surrounded by such great colleagues across the country.
I agree. I love this field. That's why I started the podcast, was to help other PIOs and future PIOs get into the field. So I agree. So Josh, how can people best reach out to you if they want to get in contact with you?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. I'm TBI Josh Devine. Feel free to connect with me there. Or if you want to shoot me an email, it's just josh.devine@tn.gov. Happy to help.
I will put all that in the show notes. Josh, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. You have a great campaign going there with your anti-trafficking campaign. I thought it was something I wanted to talk to you about. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, happy to do it. I appreciate your
interest. You, Josh. You have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your night. Take care.
You betcha. Take care.
That was Josh Devine from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Thanks for coming on the show, Josh.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.